Guessing, I hope.
Okay, today we're going to conduct an interview with Michael Hugh Lingwood Sr., born in 1937,
Yes.
who happens to be my dad. I'm Michael Lingwood Jr. conducting this interview. Well, can you give us your full names and date of birth?
Michael Hugh Lingwood. I was born on the 12th of August 1937.
Do you know perhaps where you were born?
I was born in a town called Loughborough.
Loughborough, where's that?
It's in Leicestershire, England.
I thought you were a Coventry boy.
I stayed in Coventry for a while.
Because you were born in
Loughborough.
Loughborough.
Spelled L-O-U-G-H.
Okay.
T-O-R-O-U-G-H.
So what's your earliest what can you recall from your earliest childhood in that area?
I can recall living on a Marcus Street in Nottingham.
Marcus Street.
M-A-R-C-U-S, yes.
You can't remember the number?
No.
Okay.
I recall getting some tulip bulbs from Auntie Mona and planting them in a box in the backyard, and they in due course had beautiful flowers.
How old were you at this stage?
I was about 5 years old.
Okay, well, you speak very fondly of Auntie Mona. What was your...
Oh, she was my mother's elder sister,
Okay,
born in 1904.
1904.
So I believe.
Wow. Was she a school teacher?
Became a school teacher, never married, and adopted me as her favourite nephew.
Oh, that's nice. Okay, so during your childhood, what did you get up to? Did you get up to any mischief that we should know of?
Well, yes, but I prefer not to talk about
No, but
it.
you're a young man. What did you get up to? We need to know
When I
that.
was 5 or 6, I've got a few memories which I prefer to keep to myself.
But it's no point if we can't share.
No, not.
No, it doesn't matter.
A limit to how open I am about things. No, thank you.
But there's a statute on limitations that the crimes that you committed 30 years ago are gone now.
Yes, well, after we left Marcus Street, we went to a place called Waterloo Promenade.
Okay.
I don't remember the number of the house, but it was, as you can deduce from the name, it was a part of a tenement block that was built not long after the Battle of Waterloo, which took place in 1815.
Okay.
So it was a very decrepit block. My father paid a rent of, I think it was 30 shillings a week. 30 shillings a week.
Wow.
It had a lavatory in the backyard with a wall that rocked on the edge of the street. And we used squares of newspaper. We didn't have a bath.
Squares of newspaper to wipe your bum.
Yes, we
Oh.
didn't have a bath. We had a tub. We had a coal stove built into the wall of the house, on which we boiled water and put it in this tub. The tub was shaped like a beer barrel.
Okay.
And, I was in this tub, last of all. First my mother would bath in it, then my father would bath in it, and I would bath in it. I remember that very well.
Okay.
And feeling the warmth of that fire on my face as I was in this tub. in front of the fire.
So you were young then, eh?
Hmm.
How old would you say you were?
I stayed in that place until I was about 10 years of age.
Okay. And you left England?
Well, no, when I was 10 years of age, we moved to Rugby.
Rugby.
That's in Warwickshire.
Okay.
In Rugby, we lived in a new housing estate. Each house was half of one big house. It was like a semi, I suppose.
Semi-detached house.
It had a bath for the first time in my life, a proper bath, and it had a little garden at the back where you could grow things. It was quite civilized, in fact. Unfortunately, after the war, a large number of people who lived in the slums of London were transported into this housing estate. So the streets were filthy because of all the litter and rubbish that these slum dwellers left lying around. But apart from that, it was quite nice.
Did you enjoy your schooling years in England?
Well, yes and no. I enjoyed being always first in my class in English. I went to I succeeded in passing the 11+ exam and getting into a grammar school. I was too young to go to a grammar school by 12 days because the expiry date for applications were people who had to be born by the end of July. And I was born 12th of August. And Auntie Mona went to a MP and persuaded them to make an exception and allow me to go to a grammar school when I was a bit younger than anybody else.
Oh, and what was the story about a grammar school? Because today we don't know about anything called a grammar school.
That's two types of school. It's sort of secondary modern and grammar schools in those days, as I remember. The grammar schools were for the top 10% intellectual achievers, and I was one of them.
Wow, that's nice.
There were 50 children in my primary school class, and of them 10 succeeded in passing this exam, and I was apparently 5th of those 10, which makes me one in 10, I suppose you could say. So you've got 50 children, and 5 is 1/10, so I was in that category, the top 10%.
That's nice.
Yes, I went to this grammar school and I didn't work very hard at all. I used to get very high English marks with no effort whatsoever, and used to be bottom in French. They wrote things in my report like seems determined to be eccentric. We are afraid he will become a social misfit. No, pretty horrendous.
Because you don't want to do French.
No, it's peculiar. I used to go to school very attached to my uncle Stephen's cap from 20, 30 years before that was given to me. It was quite different in style from the modern caps that the other boys were wearing. So I had this cap.
So you want it to be different. So it's cool to be different. Why do you have to be like the rest of the
raincoat, which I kept for years. It was already too small when I went to grammar school, and I was so attached to it. It ended far above my knees. I used to loathe rugby, which I was forced to go to.
Did you have to go watch rugby matches?
and I would ride on the bicycle to where the rugby match was being held, and if there was the slightest drop of rain, I would immediately turn back.
Will, is he with us?
So,
There are a lot of peculiar things about me. My name in school, in that school, was Dopey.
Dopey.
That was my name. Yeah.
Were you pretending to be dopey?
No, just I was Dopey. Peculiar. When I was 6 years old, I'd broken my 2 front teeth, so they were points. The 2 big front teeth. They were never fixed. When I went to grammar school, I had tartar along my gums, so it was pitch black from one side to the other in a layer just below my gums. I used to object to people cutting my nails, so more often than not I would have black nails.
No!
All this is true. And I used to go in the playground and not talk to anybody. I'd stand in a corner or against the wall.
Did you just become an introvert?
Totally, total misfit. Totally out of place.
Until what age? When did that... When did
Always
you-
was. Right to matric I was like that, even in South Africa.
Okay, so ultimately, in what year did your dad decide he wanted to come to South Africa, and why? What was the rationale about leaving?
He was a qualified fitter and turner, and after the war, the United Party government was trying to expand, I suppose, the steel industry. And my father was headhunted, and
Was he good at what he did?
very good with his hands. He was a lot like Frankie. He was very, very good. He could do things with his hands. That
Was he very accurate with the stuff that he was?
absolutely. During the war, he didn't have to fight, because being an expert fitter and turner, he was able to work on things called ordnance. That is, these big guns that were used by battleships and so on. So he was exempted from military service.
Wow. So he didn't have to go to war at all.
No, but he was highly skilled with his hands as a fitter and turner. So they headhunted him, and he came to South Africa sometime in 1950.
Your mom, was she a housewife
Yes,
all along?
yes. All
So this was 1950.
1950. He came to South Africa. We came, mother, me, and my sister came in. We left on February the 15th on the Cape Town Castle, and we got here on the 1st of March,
In Johannesburg.
1951. No, Vanderbilt Park.
So you went to Vanderbilt Park.
Yes,
But that's where the steel industry is.
that's where it was. Yes,
So for how long did you live in Vanderbilt Park?
until I got matric, 1954.
Okay, and then what did you do after that?
I went to Johannesburg, and I stayed in the YMCA.
In Bromfontein.
No, Tabana House at Jeppe High School for Boys. It wasn't part of Jeppe High School for Boys in those days.
Was that the YMCA?
There was a YMCA until 1956.
Are you serious?
I was there in 1955, yeah.
So one of the first places was just up the road from where you live.
Exactly.
So that
200 meters.
200 meters away from where you
I could
bought.
see the room where I was when I stayed there.
Wow. So you got an attachment to that area.
I was there for about 5 months only,
Yeah.
and I used to cycle from there to Institute for Medical Research, where I got a job as a laboratory assistant.
What were you doing? Well,
Blood tests, urea, urine, gastric juices. I learned an awful lot about what happens in these medical places that test body fluids. So I was very busy with that.
It's biological.
It was very nice. I was a pet of the girls. They were all girls, laboratory assistants. They were very charming to me. No more than that though, so I didn't have much enterprise in those days. But when I left, they gave me little presents. A tie, I remember I had for quite a long time. Anyway, I left eventually because they were only paying me 28 Rand a month. Or was it pounds? I'm not sure. Probably pounds. Then
This was in?
Then I got another job in Satmar.
What year was that?
That's 1955.
Okay. Satmar.
Yeah, South African Torbanite Mining and Refining Company.
Okay.
It's in Boksburg. And I stayed with my father, who'd got a job with his new wife and family, and stayed in Benoni.
Okay, did they separate, your mom and dad, at that stage?
Yes, they were divorced by then.
Okay, and your mom went back to England?
Not then. My mother had a nervous breakdown and was in West Copies for about 3 years.
Okay, and then when your mom came out, where did she go to?
She went to stay in various places. One place was St. B's Residential Hotel, somewhere in Hillbrow. I'm not sure if it's still there.
Okay. Anyway, so now you stayed with your dad for a while.
Yes, and then I went to university. I agreed to become a teacher. I went to university in 1956.
Yeah.
Worked very hard that first year. Got 3 seconds and a third. I passed all my subjects.
What do you mean 3 seconds and a third?
Well, a second means over 60%, but not the distinction. The first is in the university over 75%, if I remember. So I got in between 3 seconds and a third. A third would be like over 50%, 55, and the seconds would be over 60%, but less than 70, 75.
But so you weren't working really hard?
No, I worked pretty hard because I wasn't suited to what I chose when I was doing science, and I should have been doing English. But
So,
as I told you before, Mike, when I wrote matric, I made a mess of the one paper through not reading the instructions. I wrote all the questions, answers to the literature paper on foolscap paper. And when I finished all the short questions, I was told I couldn't do that. It had to go on the actual question paper itself. I'd assumed that the spaces for the answers of the questions were to indicate more or less how long the answer was supposed to be. Because sometimes they were wide, sometimes they were small. So instead of looking at instructions, because I've never seen a paper like that in all my life. Never. Not in England or South Africa. Can you believe that? They'd never ever given me a paper to write, ever. In any school, at any time, where you had to fill in the answers on the question paper itself.
okay, so it was a first for you.
Yes, so I assumed that the different length of the spaces left for the
Wow.
answers meant more
So
or
why
less...
didn't you go and rewrite it the following year?
I had nobody to tell me. I was so disappointed about what I'd done. Look, I had to copy all those questions out, the 2-hour paper, all the questions out from the short questions onto that. Then I had half an hour left to do 3 essays.
How the hell is that even
And I
possible?
wrote 3 essays. It was a tour de force, but nobody knows that. It was brilliant. But it could, no attention to style or anything like that. You know, because
It
I'm
was just a rush job. Yeah.
a rush job where I wrote down the facts, so to speak, without all the necessary elaboration which you have to have if you're a good writer. I couldn't
Wow.
do that.
So you ended up in science where you didn't want to be in the first place.
I got a first class matric. That means I got average in all my subjects of over 60%. That was the average, but no distinctions at all. Therefore, I had to sign a contract if I wanted to go to university that I would become a teacher. And because I was so disappointed about what happened in English, and nobody ever asked me. My teacher afterwards, the English teacher, she sneaked to look at my paper and she said, you've missed it. That's all she said. She didn't ask me why. And I was so shy in those days, I didn't even tell her what had happened.
Sure.
If I told her, she'd have probably told me, you have to have a rewrite.
I should have told her. Yeah.
But she never asked me.
Well, anyway, now at the age of 80, that's not going to make a hell of a difference now. Now tell us something.
So I did science. I did science, and the second year I worked damn hard for 6 months until June. I worked extremely hard. In fact, I got 73% for maths, which was the 5th highest in that year of all the maths people. I got 90 something for chemistry,
Sure.
and I got about 55, 60 for applied maths. And for physics I also got a high mark. Then I got involved with this girl, and
Which girl was that?
I prefer not to say.
No, well, it was way back in the days.
My lips are sealed.
Okay. Well, is it the lady that re-emerged?
And that messed me up permanently, because after that she suddenly vanished. I went to visit her and then she wasn't there anymore.
Did that break your
It
heart?
took me over a year to find out where she'd gone.
That she was gone.
That broke my heart, you know. I was wrecked.
Okay, well, ultimately, at some point in time, you met a younger lady. Well, she's younger than you at the time. That you ended up courting
Oh, that's many years later.
many years later.
Oh, yes, no. I mean, I pursued this female when I found out where she was, wasted a whole year, then came back and failed university, then came back again and passed. So I only finally got my university honours degree, 4-year degree, in 1962, and that was 3rd class. I got 3rd class because of one exam where I had spotted one question only instead of 2. If I spotted the other question, I would have maybe got a 2nd or even a 1st class, because in 2 of my exams I did extremely well. But the 3rd one was involving a lot of maths, physical, chemistry, a lot of maths. And unfortunately what had happened was, because of that high mark I got in my 2nd year, the middle of the 2nd year, they exempted me from writing maths at the end of the year. So the following year I wrote that exam that I had been exempted from, 2nd year again.
Okay.
And then simultaneously with that I was given a chance to do an honours degree.
Okay.
So they obviously had faith in me. So that I did an honours degree in science, which I must say I'm totally unsuited for anything to do with that.
So now we, so you ultimately ended up,
Then I got this degree in 1962, and then I went to training college.
what training college? Where was this training?
Johannesburg College of Education,
Where was it?
at the top,
Is it
Wolf Street in Braamfontein. It's now a sort of art school, I think.
was that the original?
That was the Johannesburg Teachers Training College. Been there for many, many years. That's where I've trained. I've got a picture of all the people who were there in that year. I was very keen on this little Jewish girl there, who I used to write all her notes for her.
What was her name back in the day?
No, my lips are sealed.
Ah,
But
is she still alive even?
no, she expressed her interest in developing a rather more intimate relationship, and I was too dumb to pick up the cues. So after that, she didn't want anything to do with me.
No, my goodness.
I'm telling you.
Did you just see her as a
I
friend?
was so dumb. No, she didn't want anything to do with me.
No, but did you see her just as a friend?
No. I mean, but it was like love, you know.
Oh, goodness.
True love with me is almost totally divorced from sex, believe it or not.
Is it?
It's got nothing to do with it.
Well, 9 kids later, I beg to differ.
A difference. Well, you would know. I mean, if you think you like father, like son.
Okay, now let's get on to. So you got your teaching degree, and you qualified.
Yeah.
Then where did you go to from there?
I got a job at Parktown Boys.
Right there near the place where you qualified.
And I stayed on Loveday Street, in a place called Villa Raynette. There's a huge skyscraper there today. And I went to eat at Mrs. Ravelas. That was a sort of boarding house that offered meals to people who didn't stay in the boarding house. So I went there and ate there every day.
And what street was that?
It's in Braamfontein, one of those little side streets. I don't think the building is there anymore. All those old houses that I stayed in have disappeared.
Okay. What, did they give you some grub?
Yeah, before I actually stayed in 2 places. I stayed in a place called Rockcliffe, where I had Mrs. Schmolke, who was the landlady.
Okay. And
She
what
used to give me tea and biscuits sometimes.
was accommodation expensive back in the day?
No, I don't remember what it was, but it was very little.
Right, now,
And then one day, at the end of 1964, I spotted this young lady sitting on a wall.
sitting on a wall. What street was it?
Outside Miss Ravelas's establishment.
Why, was she boarding there as well?
No, she stayed in a flat a little way up the street.
What was she doing? What was her?
I don't know. Probably hoping somebody like me would catch her eye. I've no idea.
Okay. Was she just sitting on the wall?
Yes. So I chatted to her. She was Afrikaans, and I couldn't speak Afrikaans very well in those days.
Is this true that you uttered these words? Can ek you bioscope to take?
Something like that, yeah.
Well,
I don't remember the exact words.
she recalls these
Yeah, you're not
words.
supposed to listen to this, eh? So it's confidential.
She recalls the words "Can ek you bioscope to take."
Something like that. Yeah.
Very broken Afrikaans.
Yes, she said, and off we went.
Do you recall what the movie was?
No,
So were you not focusing on the movie?
I don't think so. I've been starved for many years, you know.
Did you keep your hands to yourself in the movie?
I don't know.
You can't recall. Are your lips
again,
sealed?
we've got to draw a veil over what happened next. I'm sorry. I'm not going to tell you anymore.
So did she ultimately end up moving in there by you, or you moved in by her?
She used to come and see me, and we would listen to music on my tape recorder and on my little radio, which I plugged into the tape recorder, produced very nice sound. I used to read a book and so on.
Read a book to her.
No, to me.
Well, she just sit
I'm
there.
not going into any details about that.
But she just sit
It's
there
all
whilst
confidential.
you're reading a book.
I wouldn't say she sat there.
I think you're trying to misguide us here.
You know, that's by the way. I'm not going to discuss in detail what happened.
Well, anyway, we assume that 9 months later or less.
You assume what you like.
No, but Stephen was born then in.
What do you mean then? I got married long before Stephen was born. How dare you, sir?
Oh, did you first get married?
Yes.
Okay. And then did you guys continue staying there in Braamfontein?
For quite a while, yeah. And then that was quite interesting. Married her. I went to stay on the plot.
You love your cup.
Her father's plot. Went to stay on that.
Is that now Bottersdal near
That's right.
Lanseria Airport?
That's right.
Was it Lanseria Airport back then?
No, there was nothing then.
Was there no airport?
It was just blank land all around. Funny enough, when I was there, I was interested in buying another piece of land further down. It was the other half of that deposit of pit sand that used to exist there. And the woman wanted a ridiculous price of 25,000 rand, or was it pounds? If I knew then what I know now, I would have grabbed it at any price.
Okay.
Because then I'd have had a virtual stranglehold on all developments of that blooming airport.
Oh, but how were you to know?
And also an incredible deposit of pit sand, about 2-3 meters thick,
Now,
worth millions today.
okay, now, so you worked, you were going to, you were working as a science teacher. What grades were you teaching at Parktown Boys?
6, 7, 8.
6, 7, 8? From what year till what year?
From 1964
Yeah,
until 1969.
till 1969. Did you have your second son, me, Michael, now in...
Yes, you were born the last year I was there.
Okay, now I recall you had, how were you getting to school and
On a scooter.
all the way on
Yeah.
Unstratum Drive, what they now call
It
Malibongwe?
was 21 miles to school.
And did you go quite easily?
Yes, I used to every few months to take the scooter to Carver Motors. It was a big organisation in those days, huge property, and they would service it for me.
And you had no problems with your scooter?
No problems at all. It was continually being, oil replaced, everything. I made a point of doing that. No, that scooter was fabulous. Day after day after day, no problem at all.
Now my question to you, so 1969 you left Parktown Boys.
Yes. Then I got a job at Northview High School.
Yeah.
I was there for, no, it wasn't Northview High School. I got a job with something called Regent Institute. It's one of these colleges that you get in town.
Yeah.
To this day you get colleges like that where you... So I taught maths there for 6 months, and then it turned out that I was being a sort of substitute for some teacher who'd gone overseas and now come back. So I left after 6 months, and then I went to Northview High School.
Okay.
I taught physical science to matrics for 6 months, and after that I was asked to go to Littleton Manor High School. So I was there.
Now Littleton Manor is a very far distance from the airport.
Yeah, well, that time I bought a Vauxhall Velox,
Yeah.
and I would ride to school in the Vauxhall Velox every day.
Were the fuel prices low back then?
Oh yes.
So was there no problem driving?
No. It turned out it had nuts that came loose in the front wheel, the wing nuts. And one day when I got to school, I just parked, and when I reversed backwards, the entire front suspension bonnet fell onto the wheel. And what's peculiar about that is that I've been riding up to 80 miles an hour to get to school that very morning.
Wow. Now, didn't you pick up there was a shadow on the car?
No, I wouldn't know things like that. So the thing collapsed like that. Like it collapsed on the way when I was going at 80 miles an hour. You can imagine the catastrophe.
So, for how long were you at Littleton Manor?
Let me think.
That's just off Boerta Avenue, isn't it?
70,
In
71, 72.
Centurion, isn't it?
Well, 70 hours at the other place. It would be 71, 2, 3, 4, 4 years.
4 years. Did you enjoy it there?
Yeah, that's where I made another bad mistake. So again, I won't discuss.
Okay, and then you moved to from
Then I moved to a school in Rustenburg
Grenville High School.
that just started.
This was a brand new school.
Brand new school, yeah. It was an Afrikaans school that was turning into an English school. So standard 8, 9 and 10 when I moved in there was all Afrikaans. And only 6 and 7 was English. And then the following year it was 6, 7 and 8 was only English. 9 and 10 was Afrikaans. So I taught Afrikaans children in standard 8 and English children 6 and 7 that first year.
Did you find it interesting?
Yes, it was actually. Those Afrikaans, they were Afrikaans farm girls, a whole class of them. They were very jolly. One of the nicest crowd of people I ever met. Really jolly people.
And did they? So the Afrikaans kids were actually quite nice to teach.
Yeah, they were very hospitable people, Afrikaners. Invite you to braaivleisjes and things like that.
Huh?
But they were phasing out as a school. It's very sad, really. It used to be called the commercial high school. And the principal was still there as principal of the combined school for a while. And one day I discovered after the old school was completely gone that under the stage were all trophies for this commercial high school, you know, for this race and that race and high jump and all this, and they're all so much junk, you know. It's very sad. So the entire old school's history just went as if it had never been taught. Just vanished. A bit like Kensington High School where Duncan went. You know, that school's vanished now. People gave their lives in the war in Southwest Africa from that school. They had a memorial there and everything. All it's gone.
Not there anymore.
No, it's English school.
And all the old stuff is all gone.
That's it.
Don't they have memorials there still?
I don't think so. If you really think so, in the new South Africa, they're going to have memorials to people who died fighting the freedom fighters in Angola,
In Namibia.
in Namibia.
Okay, my question to you now is, okay, so you left Grenville Grenville. Well, you lived in Rustenburg for how many years?
I was still living on the plot. But when I left, before that I transferred, I left the plot altogether, moved to Rustenburg.
Yes, you lived at 148
I
Cox Street.
I transferred mummy there, yes. And I used to ride to Rustenburg from Pretoria. Now I had a bit of a bust up with mummy at that stage. And I stayed in Pretoria, used to ride to Rustenburg.
On a daily basis?
No, now and again.
Okay. I can recall living in Rustenburg.
Mm.
I can recall living in 148 Cox Street.
Yes,
Skew across the road from an old Ingeer church
that's right.
with a massive veld across the road.
That's great. It was
Okay.
a huge stand I had too. It was actually a gold mine. I'm always getting gold mines that I throw away, by the way. I'm a genius at this sort of thing. It was 2,800 square meters, which when the boom came to Rustenburg, as I bought that place in the first instance because I believed that platinum was going to, come back and It was,
So you think you should ever have
paid
sold that place?
I paid 10,500 for that.
Yeah, that's a bargain.
And I sold it for 18,500 when I left. And it was interesting.
Well, then there was a boom, and then there's a bust again. So you don't have to feel too
Yes.
bad about Rustenburg, because it went bust
Still, I
again.
could have made a fortune even today with that amount of land. Remember, we had mangoes and we had beautiful mulberries and guavas and lots of moles under the ground.
Yes, I remember the moles.
And I took a prefab that Peter Mundell had helped me build on the plot. I was a very ungrateful person, I was. I'd taken that from the plot and I re-erected it at 148 Cox Street.
I can remember sleeping in that prefab with a double bunk underneath a huge avocado pear tree.
No, it was a small avocado pear tree.
No, well, it ended up being a huge avocado pear tree.
I think you're thinking of something else. It was guavas on that side and mangoes.
An avocado pear tree.
There was a small one on the left-hand side if you're facing the front of the house.
No.
Now, what you thinking of?
Lemon trees. I can recall
Mangoes.
lemon trees and mango trees, and I can recall you had an avocado pear tree.
Oh, okay. I had rose bushes too in front as well,
And you did?
which I fertilized wrongly, and I got roses one year as big as dinner plates, and then all the rose bushes died.
After that.
Yes, they all died.
You also had a ball on that.
Yes, there was a hole there. We never got any water out of it. It was just a borehole. You had to watch you don't fall down it. You didn't fall down
It
it.
was a bit narrow. You shouldn't just hardly fall into it.
Still, it was a small baby might.
Not a small baby, maybe a baby cat. A cat might, or a dog might, but not a human. Anyway, so Rustenburg, you rather enjoyed your schooling at Rustenburg.
Yes, I did rather.
Was it 1978 that you left Rustenburg?
79. That's when you left. I stayed on until the end of 1979.
And then you moved to 505 Marshall Street,
That's right, in Jeppe High School for Boys.
and you started there as the HOD for science.
Yes.
Okay, and you've been teaching science all along there.
That's right.
What grades did you teach at Jeppe?
All grades. In the beginning it was mainly 6, 7 and 8 because the old head of department, Mr. McLeod, was still there and he was teaching most of the matrics. So I had 6, 7, 8 and I had some 9s and 10s. But I wasn't specialising in any particular grade at that point. Besides, I prefer teaching 6, 7s and 8s.
Why?
Because that's when you get a child interested in your subject. It's the biggest mistake that is made in most schools is to take their best teachers and put them with standard 9 and 10. That's the mistakes made all over the country, except maybe in the very expensive private schools. The best teachers in science are supposed to be those, and in maths, who teach standard 6 and 7. They should be. And the less competent ones should be teaching 8, 9 and 10. Though of course 8, okay, also is require best teacher, but that's where you start to learn chemistry in some detail. But what they usually do is they put the worst teachers in 6, 7 and 8, the new ones who don't know what's going on, and the best teachers do 9 and 10. That means that the standard 9 and 10 teachers have quite a burden because after the junior classes have all been messed up by incompetent teachers, now you've got to deal with people who are absolutely unsuitable for taking science in any form whatsoever and hate the subject and hate maths before you even open your mouth. So to get them to like the subject again is one major effort. But there was no problem with that with me at all. The reason why there was no problem is that in the early days when I was at Jeppe, if somebody started misbehaving because he hates the damn subject, and therefore hates you, he would get cuts, you see, and keep him in line.
Did you give them cuts?
No, I didn't give him cuts, go to the office. That's what used to happen. And Jeppe had fantastic discipline because of that. And I was a bloody good teacher, that was the thing, so I could start teaching standard 8s and get them very interested fairly soon. But for a couple of months there might be trouble with poor bastards who've been messed up completely in 6 and 7, you see, by lousy maths teachers. Because maths is quite an important component of science. So it's a rather curious situation, that is. It's a philosophical thing. Best teachers should be doing 6 and 7 and 8. 9 and 10 it should be the worst teachers. Because you get such a momentum with 6, 7 and 8. And if you teach well, such a desire to learn science that even incompetent teachers in 9 and 10 can get good results. Whereas if it's the other way around, you've got not good standard 6, 7 and 8 teachers. If you're stuck with 9s and 10s, you've got one hell of a problem. Because they hate maths, they hate the damn subject. And in Jeppe, every single boy had to take maths, and science.
Was that a...
Well, whether they're suitable or not. Can you imagine the problem you had with weaker classes?
Now, we've met quite a few old Jeppe boys, and they say that you were very passionate, very eccentric. You made the classes extremely fun. You know, they had a lot of laughs, and they liked taking you off the topic because you got a vast general knowledge, and
I know that.
they would...
I didn't mind that.
They would get the kids to get you off the topic, to speak about everything conceivable that...
Yes, I could do that. I'd be a raconteur, you know, like you. I could tell them stories indefinitely. And it didn't affect the results, in my opinion. Because I always got better results in science than anything else in that school.
So you're very proud of what your kids could do.
Yes, I was.
And you feel that you did your best.
Yeah, I had one mistake. When I got to the school, the then principal, Mr. Quayle, said that his friend had written an article for a magazine and he'd like me to vet it. And I said, well, look, I don't want to do anything like that because I can see all the mistakes and errors and so on very well. And in the past I've done this and it causes offence and I prefer not to. He says, no, it's not for him, it's for a friend. So I said, oh, well, that's different. I had the idea that Mr. Quayle, you see, has got this article from a friend and was now on his behalf trying to improve it. So I took this article and I slew it because it was grotty. It wasn't well done at all. And I used all my considerable skill in this sort of thing to destroy it. The idea being that Mr. Quayle now take these points and select those that he feels now that he can use to improve this thing so that it's publishable. You follow? I went to town. I was told to do this, so I did it. Meantime, he wrote the goddamn article. Now this had the following effect. Hated me with a passion forevermore. I was stupid, you see.
Did he think that? Did he realize that he was dealing with a brain?
I'm afraid he did. And but apart from that, he hated having his inadequacies as an author exposed. That's what I concluded.
Because of your good command of the English language.
Yes. I mean, 2 months after I moved in that school, there was an inspection. The inspector didn't even come to see me. except right at the end. Once. Then Quails came to me personally, privately, and said that this inspector had given me a lowly report. But I said, that's peculiar. I've only been here 2 months. So Quail just grinned and walked off. I should have tweaked then what was the matter with this guy. Because after that, whenever I tried to do anything, he would oppose it. Like, for example,